Okay, Saturday, 27th of December 2025. So, Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Semantic inertia and the incentive to perpetuate power dynamics. A bit of a mouthful, and what a great time to talk about it. This is something fascinating that I really came across and stumbled into about a year ago, a few months ago, something akin to that. And it talks about semantic inertia is once a power or myth enters a country, enters a tribe, enters a people, enters a mythos, enters a frame, enters a founding myth. When this idea, this truth, this subjective truth, semantics, the truth, once it has entered into a tribe and it hits that critical mass of just taking it for granted, social learning theory, so it just everyone perpetuates it. That's the inertia. It becomes a sacred cow. It becomes something that no one questions, and something everyone takes for granted. This idea, this mantra, this story, this concept, this route in life, what to do this, then that, then this, you name it. All kinds of sacred cows in society that would exist in any form, whether economics, political, ideological, societal, you name it, in some fashion. And there are many. There are many of these. You could say NHS is one, the royal family is one, democracy itself is a semantic inertia. It's been going on for, say, 500 or so, 300 years. And how many generations is that? So that's like 12 at least generations. Perpetual. It has that inertia, so it's just going to be perpetuated and taken for granted at a deep, visceral level in every single person. Everyone has a visceral understanding of democracy, a visceral understanding of NHS, visceral understanding of monarchy, you name it, everything. Driving on the left side of the road is one as well. Writing with pen in our right hand, for example, or even opening books this way, for example, as opposed to that way. All kinds of deep fundamental things. Some, like the books, are a bit more nuanced than others because they're not politically or ideologically charged. It's just like on the road. It's just a logistics. It's a mechanical standard now. It just is. The QWERTY keyboard is another. It hit critical mass culturally, so to have anything else is just unusual, logistically speaking, business speaking. People aren't trained for it in so many ways. Now that happens. It's social learning theory, but over decades, well, centuries even, or even deeper to say, oh, the Greeks are the fathers of democracy, so it's in the millennia in that kind of way, 2,000 or so years. But on the interesting flip side to all this is the incentive to perpetuate power dynamics. Interesting. Meaning, these things become the reality, the founding myths, these ideas, monarchy, NHS, you name it. The myth becomes reality and moral grandstanding becomes the norm in order to maintain the status quo or maintain the position. Meaning, in order to maintain these structures that have been created, you name it again, like monarchy, the ritualization of it, the institution has to continue. The embracing of it, politically, ideologically, you name it, has to happen. All these things, the different sacred cows, have to be embraced in the culture, society, the tribe, if you will, at a visceral level, as a ritual or as a founding mythos. That's interesting. As a founding mythos, otherwise the whole thing, the power dynamics, everything comes crumbling down. I did a video about this as well 6 or so months ago about you and the phoenix. When things are damaged and destroyed, the founding ideas and myths or concepts in general, when they collapse and break, people would go into a shock, let's say, and if they don't mentally regroup and work around a new founding myth or idea or standard or value or anything, then they can excel in a new system, in a new shedding kind of old ideas in one way. They would look back and justify it retrospectively, shedding old ideas and embracing new ideas. If that doesn't happen, then they become empty husk, empty shell of their former selves. It's fascinating bit of psychology. But these power dynamics have to maintain and being played out in order to maintain power itself. It's perpetual, and you could say it gets out of control, it's exponential, etc. Meaning it'll be institutions that advocate democracy for democracy's sake to maintain the idea or illusion, but that's a whole other story, a whole other interesting bit of philosophy there. The whole idea of democracy itself. It becomes almost that, if it's not careful, it can become that snake. I don't know what it's called in Norse mythology, that snake where it's eating its own tail. It can be almost reflexive so much that it becomes self destructive because it's so focused on one thing, in this case, democracy, let's say, at the expense of everything else around it, at the expense of economics, logistics, engineering, because it's ideological. In this case, it's an ideological thing, so it could be at the expense of anything. So that is interesting to understand and recognize that a country, a tribe, a nation, a continent, mankind would strive to perpetuate certain beliefs, certain power structures, certain sacred cows, just to maintain the status quo. Fair enough, I can understand that in terms of incentives in game theory. You're in charge, you want to be in charge for the foreseeable future in terms of generational, or next generations in general. Yeah, makes total sense. But it's worth understanding that. Worth understanding that there are many semantic things that have inertia, many sacred cows that we just take for granted. Inflation. Why does inflation have to be 2%? Why not 1.5? Why not 10%? Things like that. There are many things in society that we take for granted, and there will be certain power incentives, it'd be kind of natural and automatic, that would help to perpetuate and maintain those sacred cows. And then we want to recognize them because it's that like quote in The Wizard of Oz, like ignore the man behind the curtain, ignore that, peeling away the layers of reality, layers of deception is a strong word, but it's quite accurate, quite poignant. Deception, confusion, misdirection, illusion, peeling away these things to ask these critical, hard questions. Why do we have this? Why do we have that? Not to be revolutionary, not to be troublemaking, but to understand reality critically. Why this? Why like that? Why do we have books this way and not that way? Why drive left side of the road, not the right side of the road? And it's in part it's academic, out of curiosity to understand these things, peeling back layers of reality, but also it's to understand where the sacred cows are. And then being critical to say, is this sacred cow worthwhile applying in my own life? Or is this naive? Or is this critically irrelevant? Or even, and I swear this year, the word of this year has been optimized. These ideas, they would have been optimized and they would have been valid 20, 30, 50, you name it, 100 years ago, and now they are not as efficient as they used to be because the dynamics and technology has changed, but because of culture, they have perpetuated. I can think of one specific, but it's interesting and a bit controversial in general in terms of economics. But we have to be conscious of these things, even to the point where, as I just alluded to, they could be out of date in terms of entropy. Remember and understand that ideas have a half life, ideas have a shelf life before it becomes irrelevant, obsolete, redundant, because standards and values or fashions or technology changes. Ideas we have today may be redundant or 50% irrelevant 15 years from now, and 30 years from now they'll be 99 or 90% irrelevant, obsolete. Just the business model and the world and society would have changed. It just would be irrelevant. It's like knowing how horse riding today is a skill that's not necessary, but 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 200 years ago, 1825, 26, it would have been quite poignant and useful to know. Now it's just a luxury. It's like that. So then we can say, right, well, if this has inertia, but it's not optimized, not updated to the modern age, therefore it's likely going to be an efficient strategy for me to apply this, copy and paste in my own life. Therefore, this sacred cow is irrelevant, and that's how ideas die. That is how things fall out of fashion. That is how what was once popular, or things go out of fashion basically. Look into Christmas, what's called Twelfth Night, Twelfth Night celebration, completely fallen out of fashion. Ah, the power dynamics lost. Um, the tribe lost critical interest in Twelfth Night, and the idea was gone away. Just fallen out of fashion, out of living memory, etc., etc. Yeah. It's a natural weaving and winding of mankind. And these power dynamics, they're not. It's not. It's not sinister. It's not adversarial. It's just incentives. Game theory and incentives. People here, people there have an incentive to perpetuate this. It's in their best interest, and they have the critical mass of control of society, or critical mass of wealth, attention, you name it. So things are going to shift in that kind of way. As I said, it's this meandering, there's ducking and diving of mankind onwards and upwards in a in an exponential path, but on a day to day, it's weaving and winding, zigging and zagging. Ah, it's fascinating to dig deeper, but nonetheless, it's a very fascinating thing to understand and recognize in reality. But otherwise, Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Subscribe for more, and you will see me tomorrow.